Cougs house. Houston gets their 30th straight home victory in the Fertitta Center, 86-55. And as much as 86 is, I'm not sure that's the most impressive part.
You are Locked On Coogs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Coogs, daily podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker. And to everyone, whether you're Houston fans or you can't stop by, thank you for stopping by after Houston beats BYU 86-55 in a big way. Again, tell me in the comments down below if you don't know what to say. Tell me what you thought of the defensive effort in this one. It was a defensive masterpiece. Full disclosure, I've only got a few minutes here to talk. I got about 10 minutes, so I got to go coach. I got my quarter zip on. I'm ready to go out there and do my Kelvin Sampson impression myself. But I had to get in here and react a little bit. Tell me in the comments down below what you thought of this one as we go and get those as we can. And we'll do a full reaction, obviously, 30 minutes, the full 3 segments, etc., from Monday as well. But I could not let this go without talking about Houston's stifling defense. 43 NBA scouts in the arena reportedly for this one. Notable because there are only 30 teams. I mean, several teams sent multiple people to watch Houston just shut down the BYU offense. BYU is an offensively impressive team, and Houston held them to where no starter broke 10 points. In fact, only one player in the entire BYU team broke 10 points, I should say. Sorry. Egor Demin, their future top 10, top 5 draft pick kind of guy, just 3 points, did have 7 assists. He's a 6'9" point guard. He is an impressive basketball player. He got that, but had just 3 rebounds, couple turnovers. I mean, Houston really had their way with him. I think some impressive numbers to keep track of in this one. Houston had 9 steals and 7 blocks, right? That's a lot of stocks for the analytical folk out there, right? They forced 15 BYU turnovers and scored 24 points on those. Those 15 turnovers are nearly as many field goals as BYU had in the game at 18. For a long stretch of this one, BYU actually had more turnovers than field goals. BYU shot 37.5%. They've been shooting nearly 50 on the season from the field. The 3-point percentage was 33%. They've been shooting closer to 40. I will say their 33 even feels buffered because they didn't shoot nearly as many 3-pointers as they typically shoot in a game because Houston was running them off of the 3-point line. Houston had their way with the rebounds as well, won that contest 37-24. For reference, nationally, this is not just Big 12, this is not just nationally, BYU is giving up the least percent of offensive rebounds on missed field goals at just 18% coming into this game. Houston came away with 15 offensive boards and only, I guess they ended up missing a lot more, but they only missed 30 shots. That means half of their shots, they got the ball back anyway. Just a tremendous, intense effort out of Houston in this one. And I got a lot to say about it and stuff like that, but I got a couple comments, looks like here flying in. Uzan showing some progress. And so let's start with Uzan. Milos Uzan, the transfer point guard from Oklahoma, comes in and gets the start this year in replacing Jamal Shead. And I will say I was probably a little harsh on him after the Oklahoma State game because of the offensive intensity and effort there. This one, 7 points, 8 assists. And frankly, you could argue might should have had 1 or 2 more guys that put their shots in. Milos is continuing to grow into this role. The 6'4" frame and length is really helping him play defense in the Houston Cougar style of defense for sure, obviously, too. But man, to think about the fact that like he didn't have to turn on the scoring jets in this one at any point. Didn't have to rely on him to score the basketball. He played 31 minutes, had 8 assists. Really kind of coming into full form as that like true point guard of this team. Really, the offense, I think, predicated itself a lot today on the sharp shooting of Emanuel Sharp and LJ Cryer. Emanuel, mentioned, had 18 points, 4 of 8 from behind the arc. He came into the game with question marks. People worried about his ankle, foot area. I guess it was really bruised up after some sort of a practice injury this week. 18 points, 4 behind the arc, played just 20 minutes. BYU better be thinking they're lucky stars that's what he looks like injured, because if he played his normal 30 minutes, this is an easy 30 ball for Emanuel. Did have a couple foul troubles. One of his 3 fouls he got credited for, I think, was a little bit like feeling a little bit, not full strength, reaches instead of sliding his feet kind of a thing. But Emanuel looked really good given all things there. LJ Cryer-Williamson had 9 points. All 3 of those field goals come from behind the arc, 3 and 9 from back there as well. And he kind of started slow. Second half kind of came his way. Other offensive guy I want to talk about are a couple guys off the bench, and we'll talk more about lineups in the second before we wrap. But off the bench, I thought Javier Francis played his best game of this season. I don't know if it's the best game I've ever seen him play in his full time as Houston Cougar, but I thought Francis came in. He had 9 points, 5 rebounds, 3 blocks, just 2 fouls. They came in a span of about 10 seconds, but just 2 fouls, right? And I think that on the whole, that really was his best effort this year. He's kind of finding his role when he comes into the game as more of an enforcer type, but you can't stand for him to foul. He's able to slide his feet and play defense, right? And for what it's worth, he's falling into that role, and I think he played that role really well 2 years ago when he came off the bench as well, back when Jarris Walker and Jawan Roberts were starters, right? He came off the bench that year, played a lot less off the bench. In this game, he played 19 minutes, right? He never broke down in a conference game that year, I don't think. But he's finding out what he does to help this team win. I continue to be impressed by Terrance Arceneaux. Pro scouts, again, 43 pro scouts in the gym. Apparently a bunch of football recruits too. We'll have that by Monday's episode, a little bit more there. But 15 points for Terrance in front of those scouts, 4 of 5 from behind the arc, had 6 rebounds, had a couple steals, a couple nice passes in there too that, only 1 turned into an assist, 2 or 3 maybe coulda, shoulda at the NBA level. Really, really impressive all-around game from Terrance. I continue to think that Terrance is probably the most likely pro out of this group. I got people when I'm DMing and texting people, they also say that a lot of pros are infatuated with like the Jojo Tugler frame. He in 19 minutes had 5 points, 2 blocks, and 5 rebounds. And I don't know that the 2 blocks there tells the whole story on his shot deterrence and deflection. It really became very apparent, like if he was in the vicinity of the basket, people weren't going to shoot in there because he's so big and strong and got the 7'6" wingspan. Just a really strong outing as a whole on both ends of the basketball court from the Cougs. And I'm telling you right now, like BYU is, I guess they fall to 10-3 after this one. BYU is going to win some games this year. That Demin guy is a tough matchup for a lot of people. I wonder if other teams are going to have a lot of issues with that or not. We shall see. Now, I want to got a couple more comments here from Adrian's been a long time listener. I got to make sure I get Adrian's comments in there as well. And I want to also talk to him about a trend I noticed in the rotations. Before we get too terribly far into the proceedings, I do want to remind you guys today's show is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, you go to FanDuel.com, put in a $5 bet. That $5 bet hits, and boom, just like that, you get $250 back in bonus bets at that first $5 bet hits on FanDuel.com. NFL action and playoffs heating up. You got some insight on what's going on, crazy lineups out there at the playoffs starting next week at the end of the season this weekend. Go to FanDuel.com, check it out today. FanDuel.com, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Park Ranger, Locked On Coogs. You're talking about Houston's big win, 86-55 over BYU. Got a quick reaction. I got to get out and do my own Kelvin Sampson impression and coach a little bit in a second. But cannot get out of talking about this. I'm talking about a lineup they ran out in this one for large stretches of the game that I've been asking for. I had some things I liked about it and some things I didn't. So we shall see. Houston, I think in part because Emanuel had a couple fouls in the first half, and in part because he's playing with a hurt foot ankle area, had 18 points, very effective, but Houston went with a large lineup in this one for a large stretch where they had Terrance at the 3, they had Jawan Roberts at the 4, and Javier Francis at the 5. The other side of this lineup came because you had Milos Uzan, who's a 6'4" point guard, running the 1. And then they kind of rotated in. Sometimes it was Malik Wilson, who's like 6'2", 6'3". Sometimes it was LJ Cryer, who's like 6'2" at the other spot, right? That's a really big lineup when you factor in the length of Arceneaux, how many positions he can cover. And that was interesting is defensively, this lineup obviously crushed it. And so I think that's a big, big moment for them. Now, I will say, I got to go, actually. So here's what I'll say. Love the lineup. Offensively, it's got some work. We'll talk about it more later. Locked On Coogs, Premier Locked On Podcast. Your team every day. So I got to go. Bye.